"You need to move out," my mother announced mid-bite of the Christmas turkey. The words hung in the air like frozen breath on a winter morning. I set down my fork and looked across the table at her. My mother Eleanor sat there with her silver hair neatly styled and her reading glasses perched on her nose. She was 72 years old and had the same determined look she'd worn when she taught me to ride a bike 4 decades ago. "Really," I replied, keeping my voice calm. Inside my chest, my heart was doing somersaults. I was 53 years old and I'd been living in my childhood home for the past 18 months. After my divorce from Patricia and the loss of my job at the accounting firm, I had nowhere else to go. Mom had opened her door without hesitation. Now here we were on Christmas Day and she was asking me to leave. I pay the rent, the bills, and the groceries. I continued, trying to keep the hurt from my voice. My mother took a sip of water and met my eyes. There was something in her expression I couldn't quite read. Not anger, not disappointment, but something else entirely. "Daniel," she said softly. "Let me finish." The next morning I woke early. I couldn't sleep much after our conversation had ended abruptly, when Mom excused herself, claiming she was tired. I lay in my old bedroom staring at the ceiling where I'd once stuck glow-in-the-dark stars. Those stars were long gone, but the tiny marks remained. I'd spent my teenage years in this room dreaming about who I'd become. I never imagined I'd be back here at 53, starting over. By 7, I was in the kitchen making coffee. The house was quiet. Mom was usually up by 6, but her door remained closed. I made breakfast and sat at the kitchen table going through job listings on my laptop. The market was tough for someone my age. Companies wanted young, blood-fresh ideas. They didn't say it outright, but I could read between the lines. Around 9, Mom emerged. She was dressed in her church clothes, though it was the day after Christmas. "Good morning," I said carefully. "Good morning, Daniel," she replied. She poured herself coffee and sat across from me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. "About yesterday," I began, but she held up her hand. "I need you to do something for me today," she said. "Of course, anything. I need you to drive me to Pine Ridge." Pine Ridge was a senior living community about 30 minutes outside of town. My stomach dropped. "Mom, are you—" I couldn't finish the sentence. "Just drive me, Daniel, and listen. Really listen." The drive was quiet. Mom stared out the window at the winter landscape. Snow covered everything, making the world look clean and new. We pulled into Pine Ridge, and I was surprised by how nice it looked. It wasn't the sterile institutional place I'd imagined. The buildings were warm red brick with white shutters. There were walking paths and a frozen pond where I could imagine people ice skating in better weather. Mom directed me to the main office. Inside, we were greeted by a woman named Sarah, who seemed to know my mother well. "Eleanor, it's wonderful to see you again," Sarah said, embracing her again. "Sarah, this is my son Daniel." We shook hands. "Your mother has told me so much about you." I looked at Mom, confused. How long had this been going on? Sarah led us on a tour. The facility was beautiful. There was a library, a craft room, a small theater. The apartments were spacious with full kitchens and private bathrooms. Residents had their independence, but access to help if needed. "The community here is wonderful," Sarah explained. "We have book clubs, game nights, movie screenings, and group outings." Mom walked through it all with a slight smile. She asked questions and took notes. I followed in stunned silence. Finally, we sat in Sarah's office. "So, Eleanor, have you made your decision?" Sarah asked. Mom nodded. "I have, and yes, I'd like to reserve the 2-bedroom unit we discussed." "2-bedroom? Mom, what's going on?" I asked. She turned to me and took my hands in hers. Her skin was soft and papery warm from holding her coffee in the car. "Daniel, when your father passed 15 years ago, I thought my life was over," she began. "I was 57 and suddenly alone. After 35 years of marriage, I spent 2 years in that house surrounded by memories, unable to move forward. Then one day your Aunt Martha dragged me to a grief support group. I didn't want to go, but she insisted. That group saved my life." I squeezed her hands, listening. "I met people who understood my pain, and together we helped each other heal. I learned that moving forward doesn't mean forgetting, it means honoring the past while building a new future." She paused, gathering her thoughts. When you came home 18 months ago, my heart broke for you. I saw the same look in your eyes that I'd seen in my mirror after your father died. You were lost, Daniel. Tears pricked my eyes. I know, Mom, and I'm grateful you took me in, but nothing, she interrupted gently. You needed a safe place to land, and I was happy to provide it. However, it's been 18 months and you're still landed. You haven't taken off again. I opened my mouth to protest, but she continued. You pay my bills and my rent and my groceries, and you think that makes you independent. But Daniel, you're hiding. The words stung because they were true. I'm moving here to Pine Ridge, Mom said firmly. I've been thinking about it for over a year. The house is too big for me and I'm lonely. I want community and activities and people my own age. But Mom, the house, I stammered. The house is yours, she said simply. I stared at her. What? I'm signing it over to you. The mortgage was paid off years ago. It's yours, free and clear. Mom, I can't. Yes, you can and you will. But here's the condition, Daniel. You can't just live there. You have to make it a home again. Your home. Not the place where you're waiting for your real life to start. Your real life is happening right now. Sarah discreetly stepped out, giving us privacy. I don't understand. I said, though, I was beginning to. When you said you pay the rent, the bills, the groceries, you were right, you do. But you're paying them for someone else's life. You're maintaining my life. My home. My existence. You need to build your own. Moving here will be good for me. And staying in that house will be good for you. But only if you truly make it yours. Paint the walls different colors. Get rid of my old furniture if you want. Turn your father's study into whatever you need it to be. Make it Daniel's house. Not your childhood home. I felt something crack open inside my chest. It was terrifying and liberating all at once. What if I fail? I whispered. What if I can't make it work? What if I end up losing the house? Mom smiled, that smile that had comforted me through skinned knees and broken hearts and every disappointment in between. Then you fail and you try again, but at least you'll be trying. Right now you're just existing. We sat in silence for a moment. Outside the window I could see residents walking along the snowy paths. They were laughing, talking, living. When do you move? I asked finally. End of January. That gives us a month to sort through things. I'll take what I need and you can decide what you want to keep. The rest we'll donate. I nodded slowly. There's something else, Mom said. I've been talking to Harold Peterson. Harold owned a small accounting firm in town. His partner retired last year and he's been looking for someone with experience. I may have mentioned you, Mom. He wants to meet you after New Year's. It's not a handout, Daniel. He needs help and you need work. What you do with the opportunity is up to you. The drive home was different. The landscape looked the same, but something inside me had shifted. When we pulled into the driveway, I looked at the house with new eyes. It was a modest 2-story colonial with blue shutters and a wraparound porch. The Christmas lights I'd strung up a few weeks ago twinkled in the late afternoon light. Your father and I bought this house when I was pregnant with you. Mom said, we were so young and so scared. 25 years old with a baby on the way and a mortgage we could barely afford. But we made it work. We filled it with love and laughter, and life. Now it's your turn. That night I couldn't sleep again, but for different reasons. I walked through the house, really looking at it. The wallpaper in the dining room was from the 1980s. The carpet in the living room was worn thin in paths where we'd walked for decades. Dad's study was exactly as he'd left it 15 years ago. A shrine Mom couldn't bear to change. I thought about what she'd said, about moving forward while honoring the past. Around midnight I found myself in the basement going through old boxes. I found photos from my wedding to Patricia. We'd been so young, so certain. 25 years of marriage ended with papers signed in a lawyer's office. I found my college diploma and my first business card from when I'd made junior. Partner at the firm. That career was gone too. I found a box of my childhood drawings and school projects. Mom had saved everything. At the bottom was a construction paper card I'd made for Mother's Day when I was 7. I opened it and read my own childish handwriting. Dear Mom, you are the best because you help me when I am sad and you teach me to be brave. I love you. I sat on the cold basement floor holding that card and cried. Not sad tears exactly, but something cleaner, like I was washing away old grief to make room for something new. The next morning I started making calls. I reached out to old colleagues, not asking for jobs but reconnecting. I scheduled coffee meetings and lunch dates. I called Harold Peterson and set up an interview. I went to the hardware store and bought paint samples. I spent the next few weeks helping Mom pack. We went through 47 years of accumulated life. Every item had a story and Mom shared them all. We laughed and cried and remembered. She took her clothes and her books and photos and some furniture. The rest she let go of with surprising ease. Things are just things, she said. The memories aren't in the objects, Daniel, they're in here. She tapped her heart. My interview with Harold went well. He offered me a position not as a partner but as a senior accountant. The pay was less than I'd made before, but it was honest work and room to grow. I accepted. On moving day, I helped Mom settle into her new apartment. The 2-bedroom unit was perfect. She'd taken the smaller room and set up the larger one as a guest room. For when you visit, she said, which I expect you to do often, at least once a week. I hugged her. I will, Mom, I promise. And Daniel, she said as I was leaving. Thank you. For what? For letting me do this. For understanding. Some children would fight their parents on a move like this. They'd feel guilty or worried. But you trusted me to know what I need. That's a gift. I drove back to the house, to my house. It felt different now. Not like I was returning to a temporary shelter, but coming home. Over the next few months, I transformed the space. I painted the living room a warm sage green. I pulled up the old carpet and refinished the hardwood floors underneath. I turned Dad's study into a home office. I kept his desk but added my own touches. His picture sat on the bookshelf watching over me as I worked. I framed some of my old artwork and hung it in the hallway. Not because it was good, but because it represented who I'd been, the journey I'd taken. I started having people over, colleagues from Harold's firm for dinner, old friends I'd lost touch with during my marriage, Mom on Sunday afternoons. We'd have tea and she'd tell me about her book club and the watercolor class she was taking. She'd made friends, she was happy, and slowly, steadily, so was I. One Sunday in late spring, I was expecting Mom for our usual visit. She arrived with a man I didn't recognize. He was tall and lean with kind eyes and a gentle smile. Daniel, this is Robert, Mom said with a slight blush. Robert, this is my son. We shook hands. Robert had moved into Pine Ridge in March. He was a retired teacher, a widower. He and Mom had discovered a shared love of old movies and terrible puns. They'd become close friends, maybe something more. As I watched them together in my kitchen laughing over tea, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. My mother at 72 was building a new life. She wasn't done growing, changing, evolving, and neither was I. Later, after they left, I stood on the porch watching the sunset. The house behind me was truly mine now. Not a museum to my childhood, not a way station between failures, but a home. A place I'd built with my own hands and my own choices. I thought about that Christmas dinner. About Mom's words that had felt like rejection. You need to move out. She'd been right, but not in the way I'd thought. She hadn't been kicking me out. She'd been setting me free, and in doing so, she'd freed herself too. Sometimes love means letting go. Sometimes it means pushing someone out of the nest even when they're 53 years old and scared. Sometimes it means trusting that the people we love are stronger than they think. Mom had taught me to ride a bike when I was 6. She'd stood behind me holding the seat, then let go without telling me. I'd pedaled furiously, certain I would fall. Then I'd realized I was riding on my own. I'd looked back and she was there standing in the middle of the street, her hands clasped together and tears streaming down her face. Not because she was sad, but because she was proud. That Christmas she'd let go again. And once more I'd found I could ride on my own. The house is quiet now as I sit here writing this. It's my quiet, though. My peace. I think about young Daniel paying his mother's bills, maintaining her home, believing that financial contribution equaled independence. I was so wrong. Real independence isn't about money. It's about taking responsibility for your own happiness, building a life that's authentically yours, having the courage to start over when necessary. Mom knew that. She'd learned it the hard way after Dad died, and she loved me enough to make sure I learned it too, even if it meant risking my anger or hurt, even if it meant upending both our lives. That's the thing about mothers. The good ones anyway. They give you roots and wings. They catch you when you fall, but they also push you to fly. Mom gave me both. And now at 53, I'm finally soaring. Tomorrow, I'll drive over to Pine Ridge. I'll have tea with Mom and probably Robert too. We'll laugh and talk, and I'll head home to this house. My house, my home, my life. And I'll be grateful. Grateful for a mother who loved me enough to let me go. Grateful for the courage to start again. Grateful for second chances and new beginnings. Grateful that it's never too late to build the life you want. If you're listening to this and you're stuck, if you're hiding in someone else's life or living in the past, if you're scared to take that next step, let me tell you what my mother taught me. You're stronger than you think. The life you want is waiting, but you have to be brave enough to reach for it. And sometimes, the people who love you most will give you the push you need, even if it hurts, even if it's scary, because that's what love does. It sets you free. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched your heart, I'd be grateful if you'd like this video. Share it with someone who might need to hear it, subscribe to hear more stories like this, and leave a comment telling me about a time someone loved you enough to let you go. I'd love to hear your story too. Until next time, remember that it's never too late to start again. And sometimes the greatest gift is the courage to begin.